Sifting through the Epstein files this Saturday night. The revelations and redactions from the long-awaited documents linked to the convicted sex offender, why they're fueling accusations of a cover-up.
There's also this mixed feeling of what are we hiding here?
American airstrikes across Syria targeting the so-called Islamic State as the terrorist group eyes a comeback. Taking off without taking your shot.
People think about it a little bit too late.
The growing number of Canadians skipping out on travel vaccines. Plus, on the busiest travel weekend of the year, how these furry friends are lending a paw.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin with revelations and reaction to thousands of newly released documents from the investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Their long-awaited release was required by a new transparency law. The deadline for the Justice Department to release the full file was yesterday. But at this point, hundreds of thousands of documents still have not been made public, and many that have are heavily redacted. As Candice Cole explains, it's only fueling allegations of a cover-up.
What are we hiding here?
Angry and frustrated. That is the reaction from the families of Jeffrey Epstein survivors and lawmakers after the Justice Department fell exceedingly short of the December 19th deadline requirement to release all the files related to the late convicted sex offender.
What we understand is that it's about 10%. Mm-hmm. And so you look at it and you say, well, I thought we asked for all the documents.
Of the files released, hundreds are blacked out entirely, and thousands more are heavily redacted, like this message for Epstein that reads, "I have a female for him," from who remains unknown, leaving many unanswered questions and survivors feeling sidelined.
It's not sufficient. Transparency means timely, complete disclosure, not partial release or delay. Like we've had
a lot of effort and money and time put into redactions, not to protect victims, but to protect people in power.
Most of the files are photos of celebrities, magician David Copperfield, Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, and many featuring former President Bill Clinton, including one in a hot tub with a woman the DOJ claims is an Epstein victim. Clinton's former chief of staff coming to his defense, accusing the Trump administration of stalling. He suggests Clinton knew nothing of Epstein's sex abuse crimes and cut him off the moment they came to light, while alluding that Trump continued his relationship with Epstein despite the charges against him.
It's really a Democrat problem. The Democrats were Epstein's friends.
President Trump avoided releasing the Epstein files for months into his second term, framing the scandal as a hoax before finally changing course in November. This latest batch of documents barely mentions Trump. His name does appear on a contact list that also names Ivana and Ivanka Trump, and a note that Trump had called for Epstein. Members of Congress now threatening legal action against the Justice Department for failing to meet the deadline.
Thomas Massie and I will continue to explore all options to fight to make sure that they comply with the law, whether that is holding people in inherent contempt, recommending people for prosecution, recommending impeachment, or private lawsuits.
Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General overseeing the release of the Epstein files, told Fox News Friday he expects several 100,000 more documents to be released over the next few weeks. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
The U.S. has seized a second oil tanker departing from Venezuela in international waters. The move follows President Trump's announced blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers from Venezuela as the U.S. ramps up pressure on President Nicolas Maduro. The U.S. also conducted multiple airstrikes in Syria against the so-called Islamic State last night. The attacks were in retaliation for an ambush that killed 2 U.S. troops and a civilian interpreter last week. As Nathaniel Dove reports, the notorious terror group appears to be mounting a comeback.
The U.S. military destroying 70 targets of the so-called Islamic State in Syria Friday.
We hit the ISIS thugs in Syria.
U.S. President Donald Trump was clear. This was revenge.
I ordered a massive strike on the terrorists that killed our 3 great patriots last week.
For a suspected ISIS gunman killing 2 U.S. soldiers and a civilian interpreter. A researcher who studies extremism says the strike's impact will likely be limited.
It is effective, but on the short term. They still have their plans, and they still are benefiting from the ideological mainstream that is ongoing around the world.
Syria transformed in the past year. Bashar al-Assad's dictatorship fell, chased by rebels commanded by Ahmed al-Shara, whom the U.S. also once designated as a terrorist. Now the country's president, he succeeded in having Trump remove some sanctions, which this businessman says is a rebirth for the economy. But the country still faces a challenge.
ISIS has never stopped plotting and attempting a prison break.
Omar Mohammed says the new Syrian government can't control all of its territory, making it easier for ISIS to recover land and become more active abroad, spreading propaganda and anti-Semitism online.
It is now much easier to radicalize, but also to recruit people for radical organization,
which he says Hamas's deadly October 7th attacks helped boost. Police say ISIS inspired the Bondi Beach attack in Australia and recent attempted kidnappings in Toronto. Mohammed says fighting ISIS must involve combating false narratives online and pushing back on the ground, though the U.S. plans to withdraw its last 1,000 troops from Syria next year.
The security concerns in Syria, if they are left unchecked, and I said this from day one, it will become easier for Daesh to infiltrate.
ISIS never disappeared and now could pose a danger again. Nathaniel Dove, Global News, Toronto.
At least 6 Palestinians were killed after an Israeli airstrike on a school sheltering displaced families in Gaza. Palestinian officials say the victims include a baby. Their funerals were held today. Israel's military says its troops fired at what it called suspicious individuals. Palestinian officials say more than 400 people have been killed by Israel in Gaza since the ceasefire took effect back in October. In Ukraine, another round of Russian airstrikes killed at least 8 people in the port city of Odessa overnight. Russia also claimed to have captured 2 more villages in eastern Ukraine. It comes as the Russian delegation arrived in Miami today for more talks with the U.S. on a potential peace deal. Russian officials met with U.S. President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. The Americans held separate meetings with European and Ukrainian diplomats earlier this week. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the U.S. is proposing hosting direct talks between Russia and Ukraine. And turning to news here at home now, and a tense 24-hour standoff between police and an alleged gunman in Welland, Ontario, has finally ended. Authorities say 59-year-old Daniel Tronco was arrested this morning. Tronco barricaded himself inside a former church on Friday after he allegedly shot a police officer who had visited that property to address a bylaw complaint about a large fence. The injured officer was sent to hospital but has since been released. Tronco was also shot by police and is now in stable condition. He's been charged with attempted murder. Canada's flu season appears to be peaking just as friends and family gather for the holidays. The latest numbers show cases spiking. Health officials say at least 5 provinces are now dealing with widespread outbreaks. 2,100 patients have been hospitalized. That's up 60% from the start of the month. As Suzanne Lapointe reports, health officials have a holiday message for Canadians.
Hospitals across the Maritimes are bracing for the possible impact of a new strain of influenza, with hospitals in Ontario and Alberta already seeing flu activity in patients showing up in high amounts.
What I can say right now is that we are seeing high levels of flu activity across all of our emergency departments. We're seeing more moderate levels of COVID activity, and at this time we're seeing, fortunately, fairly low levels of RSV activity. Compared to what we would typically have seen, for example, last year.
Melanson is urging people to avoid the ER for hospitals during the holidays if it's not an emergency.
We still continue to have presentations in our emergency departments of lower acuity patients, up to potentially 30%.
In a statement, the Vitalité Health Network told Global News they are already seeing a rise in hospitalizations related to respiratory viruses. Both New Brunswick health authorities are encouraging patients to get their flu shots, but it's not a silver bullet.
This year there's not the best match between, for the H3 strain, what's in the vaccine and what's actually circulating, because we have to make the vaccine about 6 months ahead of time, and the virus, the H3 part of the virus, has changed a little bit.
Masks are now required at all Nova Scotia health sites, and Dr. Strang urges people to stay home if they're sick. He says ahead of holiday socializing, people should remember some best practices from COVID times to stop the spread of the flu.
Careful hand washing, what we call cough etiquette, or if you cough or sneeze, do it in your sleeve. And it's certainly a time to be thinking about if you're out and about in a crowded indoor public place, time to be thinking about wearing a mask.
Suzanne Lapointe, Global News, Moncton.
And if you're planning to travel abroad this holiday season, health officials are urging travelers to check their vaccinations after a new report found a growing number of Canadians are not getting the travel protection they need before taking off. Catherine Ward reports on the risks.
Before you pull out the suitcase or confirm a hotel, Dr. Brian Conway says part of a travel checklist should include making sure your vaccines are up to date.
People think about it a little bit too late, and when they consult, they're told, well, you should have come a few weeks ago, and now we're going to potentially have to wing it.
Federal data analyzed by Rexall Pharmacy Group suggests 4 in 5 Canadian travelers skipped travel vaccines before their most recent trip.
In preparing for travel, we often, book our vacations and our flights and our accommodations well in advance, but looking at our healthcare needs is something I think we sometimes forget.
Where you are going will dictate the vaccines that are needed, and doctors say some shots must be administered weeks in advance.
Certain countries in Africa, certain countries in the Americas will require the yellow fever vaccine, and it varies from year to year.
Whether it's travel to Southeast Asia, so places like Thailand, Vietnam, vaccines like your hepatitis A might be required, or typhoid, depending on which countries you're going to as well, like Japanese encephalitis might be another one that is required.
Dr. Conway says travel vaccines are a detail that, if overlooked, could send a person packing.
If it is required, in some cases you will just be denied entry to that country. And it really is black and white. They look for your certificate. If you don't have it, then you're going home. So preparing ahead of time is really the key here.
While holiday travel for December and January is top of mind for many, doctors say spring break is not that far away. And if you plan on going abroad, now is the time to check with a pharmacist or travel clinic to see if any vaccines are needed. Catherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
Tens of thousands of people are without power across eastern and Atlantic Canada after a major windstorm blew through the region. Utility crews are working to restore electricity to more than 40,000 people across Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland and Labrador. Strong winds also knocked out power to thousands of customers across Quebec. Wind gusts reached 90 kilometers an hour in some areas, knocking down trees and toppling branches into power lines. Freed after decades in prison. Coming up, a convicted multiple murderer in Montreal speaks out after his case goes under review. A Montreal man convicted of a quadruple murder back in the 1990s is spending the holidays outside prison for the first time in more than 3 decades. Daniel Jolivet has always maintained his innocence and is now free while the Federal Justice Department reviews his conviction over concerns of a miscarriage of justice. Phil Carpenter was there for the release of a man who's now hoping to clear his name.
After 33 years, Daniel Jolivet is finally free. The 68-year-old was just granted bail after serving time for a quadruple murder in Brossard in 1992, for which he has always maintained his innocence.
Didn't believe me, I even asked to pass the polygraph test in 1992.
Lawyer Nicolas Saint-Jacques said his client's conviction was likely a miscarriage of justice. The judge ruled in favor granting Jolivet conditional release on bail.
It was a decision that was based on the representation of the parties, a very extensive motion that we filed in court, and a lot of evidence as well.
The defense lawyer presented evidence during a bail hearing Wednesday that cast doubt about the 1994 verdict and the fairness of the trial. The prosecution also had concerns.
After being informed of several new information, decided to reevaluate the file and determine whether he had access or received a fair trial.
Earlier this year, Canada's Justice Department said there was enough evidence to believe that there could have been a miscarriage of justice in Jolivet's case. Now they're investigating.
So the Minister of Justice at the end of the process can decide to either order a new trial or send the file to the Court of Appeal.
That investigation could take up to 4 years. Jolivet was released under two $25,000 bonds and several conditions, including a requirement to live in a Verdun apartment while his case is reviewed and that he gets support.
That he's not left alone, and he's very, there's a lot of people around him, a lot of people who can assist him in reinserting the society.
His family is thrilled to have him home for the holidays, saying it's the perfect Christmas gift. Not so for Jolivet, who is still upset that it took this long.
The judge, you know, she set me free on bail, but what gift is there after 33 years there? You should have given me that gift like in the first week when I was saying I'm innocent.
Still, he appears relieved to be free and hopes his name will eventually be cleared while he waits the result of his case review. Phil Carpenter, Global News, Montreal.
Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife have been sentenced to a total of 17 years in prison for corruption. The court found the couple guilty of illegally retaining and selling valuable gifts, including Saudi jewelry. Khan and his wife deny any wrongdoing, calling the case politically motivated. His lawyers say they plan to appeal. Still ahead, home for the holidays. After a months-long NATO deployment in Europe, members of the Royal Canadian Navy disembark in Halifax. A group of commercial lobster harvesters in Nova Scotia wants the courts to settle a fight over Indigenous fishing rights. Since one Micmac First Nation launched its own lobster fishery 5 years ago, tensions between the band and commercial fishers have flared. Heidi Petracek reports.
Lawyers made arguments in Nova Scotia Supreme Court in a case launched by lobster harvesters who want a Mi'kmaq band's fishery declared illegal.
This is fishermen of the Maritimes attempting to have those questions answered once and for all.
A case the First Nation, Sebeganegidi, told the court should be dismissed.
We're looking for summary judgment on the basis that they don't have standing and that the claim is bound to fail, in effect.
5 years ago, Sebeganegidi started its own lobster fishery in southwest Nova Scotia outside the regulated season. There were violent confrontations, injuries, and a fish plant was torched. The federal government at the time said it could only work with First Nations to manage the Indigenous harvest.
We cannot, as a government, tell First Nations what a moderate livelihood is.
That moderate livelihood wasn't defined in a Supreme Court ruling once cited by band members as permission to fish under the band's own management plan. A group representing commercial harvesters argues that muddied the waters and it wants clarity.
When you don't have clear rules around moderate livelihood, you get chaos. And we've seen what chaos looks like.
Sebeganegidi is an outlier here. The majority of First Nations are choosing to fish within season and pursue agreements with the federal government.
Sebeganegidi had filed a lawsuit against the federal government in 2021, arguing Ottawa's fisheries rules infringe on band rights. But it abruptly dropped the case this summer. Talks with Ottawa, though, haven't gone well. The band stating a recent meeting with the fisheries minister showed, quote, unwillingness to acknowledge and respect our constitutionally protected treaty and Aboriginal rights. In a statement, the minister's office says Joanne Thompson is willing to talk. However, no agreements have been reached. Sebeganegidi's chief did not respond to an interview request. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
And staying in Halifax, there was an emotional homecoming today for the crew of HMCS St. John's. About 250 crew members made it home just in time for the holidays after a 5-month deployment to Europe as part of Operation Reassurance. That mission was launched back in 2014 following Russia's annexation of Crimea to bolster NATO's presence in the region. Up next, how therapy dogs are easing the stress of holiday travel at a Canadian airport. Welcome back. This is the busiest travel weekend of the year at most major airports across the country. Large crowds and winter weather can make for a stressful experience, but Edmonton International Airport has found an antidote for that anxiety. Nicole Stringer reports on the pet therapy program that's been calming nerves for a decade.
At the Edmonton International Airport, these pet therapy dogs are doing important work.
Well, have a fantastic day.
They're making the rounds, visiting with people, and they don't get far before someone wants to say hello.
People that may be bored, people that are scared of flying, people that are stressed out. We look for planes that are late so that we can make sure that we capture those people and send them off on a happy note. Tucker.
Janet Waltho and her dog Tucker come every week.
It's a great way to share these amazing animals that are our own pets and giving them a bit of a job. Tucker loves a job.
The Pet Therapy Society of Northern Alberta has been spreading joy and calm through the pet therapy program at YEG since 2015.
We were the first airport in Canada to bring a program like this into an airport.
10 years later, there are 9 dogs and their handlers volunteering.
For us, really what this is about is ensuring that the passenger journey is a really beautiful one. And I know that flying for everyone isn't always the easiest thing to do.
Let's go. Right from the start, we noticed how much of a difference it can make just having one of the dogs in the airport.
Waltho says this can be a chaotic place, so the dogs need to be okay with that.
Here, there's a lot of interaction. It has to be the right dog for the airport that likes noise and sounds and all the different types of people that they encounter.
But one thing is clear. These furry stress busters are a huge hit with passengers.
You can see the smiles on people's faces. I've even seen people lay down on the floor and rub on the bellies of some of these dogs because they feel so comfortable and they feel so much at home when these dogs are around them.
The organization is looking for more volunteers to continue their important work through the next decade.
He's very nice, isn't he?
Nicole Stilger, Global News.
Good boy.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is Prince George, BC. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Have a great night.